not being in the public view very often. Peter found that hard to observe because of his temper. Paul found that very hard to observe because of his ability. After all, Paul was a very rich man. He was a tent maker by trade. And in those days, almost everybody who traveled anywhere at any time needed to have a tent. And Paul was a maker of tents, so he was fairly well off. Paul was a Pharisee, a high-class religious member. He spoke at least 5 or 6 different languages. He was prepared to argue not just with the ordinary people in the market, but also in front of the audience in the Areopagus of Athens, in front of heads of state, in front of the greatest brains and intelligent people of his time. Paul was able for all of them. But you might begin to wonder what attracted Peter and Paul to be so faithful in their lives to a man whom very few people knew, a man called Jesus of Nazareth. Would you be prepared to change your whole life and to dedicate your whole life for somebody who at the time was unknown in a foreign country, asking us to love our neighbor, asking us to forgive our enemies, asking us to be kind and gentle and generous throughout our lives? And to follow a man with an idealism like that required people of the caliber and people of the silent belief of Peter and Paul, in the midst of a whole generation of people who probably did not know Jesus at all. Peter and Paul were prepared, each in his own way, to follow the teaching of Jesus in everything. That's why I picked out 2 seminarians who are going to dedicate their lives to somebody who is not very acceptable in the world today. Somebody whose teaching and idealism is mocked and ridiculed in every state I can think of. And that's why, when I look back only 1 week at an event that took place here in St. Peter's Church on Sunday last, 37 young people in public agreed to dedicate their lives to the following of Christ, to dedicate their lives to the idealism of Peter and Paul, to dedicate their lives against the trend of modern materialism and modern approach, and to live a life of poverty and obedience, love, faith, and forgiveness. That's why it is so important for all of us to think of the life of Peter and Paul at a time when nobody in the world was interested in the teaching of Jesus. And a question I could ask right now: is Jesus any better believed or any better resembled, or is he any better imitated nowadays than he was when he existed himself? That's the challenge facing young people now. And that's the challenge in front of our two young new seminarians. Will they be able and as faithful as Peter and Paul to launch out into the deep and let down their nets for a catch, as Peter was told, in spite of the fact that he had been fishing all night and caught nothing? Or, like Paul, to teach and spread a news that's against the thinking of the vast majority of people? That's why today, 2012, the teaching of Paul and the example of Peter are so much at loggerheads with the thinking of the world and with the thinking of young people who decide to dedicate their lives to carry on where elderly people like myself wasted our ways and our times in trying to bring people back to the call of Christ. Jesus did not say only to Peter, he says it to each one. Not just the two seminarians I mentioned, he says it to each one individually for the rest of your life. Like the 37 confirmed on Sunday last, come, follow me, and I will make you to be fishers of men. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a soft life. It's not going to be a life of praise and incense, but a life very often of loneliness and rejection. Everybody is called to follow Christ, as Peter was called and as Paul was called. So let each one of us implore Peter and Paul to give us some of their courage, some of their understanding, some of their agreement with the call of Christ. Come, follow me, and I will make you to be fishers of men. Today we all celebrate Peter and Paul, and Peter and Paul